for by the Parents Association. It was about $18,000.
Wow.
So I know that Mr. Fauché would join me in thanking many parents and indirectly students who helped raise those funds over a period of time. I mention this at this level of detail because we had some questions from citizens about where were these funds found in the budget, and they were found through the Parents Association. So we now are catching up here at the middle school.
Well, do you have a report on, is it too early to give us a number on lunches, or?
It is too early because early in the year, an awful lot of kids bring lunch until they're accustomed to the buying lunch. Okay. But in all honesty, I think we suspect or expect a little bit of slippage in sales at the beginning of the year. With any price increase, you're going to get that. And I'll report on that more fully once I think there are some substantive numbers.
I still can't believe $18,000.
Well, I was going to add.
It's amazing.
It is amazing, and I'm glad those citizens are asking questions. But my retort would be that $18,000 should be coming out of the town budget.
It should.
And shouldn't have to be raised by parent organizations. We shouldn't have to raise money from parents to buy furniture for our schools.
Yes.
And I'm sorry, that may be an unpopular stance, but that's the truth.
You know, when these kids go off to Washington in the 8th grade or the 6th grade nature, that's what you expect the fundraising
exactly.
to support the kids that can't afford those extras, you know. So I'm very grateful.
I'm very grateful, but I just
think it's, as a taxpayer, I feel that I should have thought of that for the school department. But times are tough, and that was very generous of them.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Cliff, do you have a comment? Or?
I'm of the opinion that we should be buying all of these things out of town funds.
Yeah.
And I've been saying it all along that we have a civic responsibility as taxpayers to fund schools.
Right.
And other things.
Okay, you know what happens.
We need to meet that need. And unfortunately, 2.5 doesn't allow us to meet that need.
And the more you don't do it, the more each year you have to ask the parents' organization to pay for whatever. And you get to a point where the budget no longer reflects reality. It reflects some fantasy budget that only covers X% of what you really need to run the school system. And I guess that's, you know, very grateful to the parents, but that's one of my big concerns, is that we continue to charge fees and depend on parent organizations, and at some point, something's going to break on one side of the equation. And I think that's the problem that I have with it in general.
I might also add that I don't want to mislead you into thinking this was fundraising from this summer. You know, the so-called gift accounts that exist in each of the 5 school buildings are residual accounts for the depositing of funds from all these fundraising sources. And so Mr. Fauché inherited some funds in that gift account and wasn't able to do that. As an aside, too, I should also mention we made efforts to recycle this furniture because that's an appropriate thing to do. We called a scrap metal dealer, and we called a quote-unquote junk dealer, who sometimes purchase these things from you. But even those 2 entities weren't able to help us. So, although we made the effort.
Did you have to pay to have it hauled out of here? Yeah.
And I guess just to further my point, that we could say, geez, oil and gas are really going up. Geez, we don't have the money in the budget. Can we get some parents to raise money for oil and gas? And I just don't want to see us go down that road. And great appreciation for the parent organization because they do great things. But as Mrs. Baca says, great things to help a kid go to Washington or to the 6th grade, you know, outward bound trip, or some of the other field trips, or bringing in the acts to the middle and elementary and high schools. And that's really, because if we don't have the funds for that, if we're paying furniture, then the kids are going to lose out, you know, on the other side of it. And I just don't want people to lose, you know, lose that fact. So, David, I had a question on the enrollment. I believe it's the 2nd straight year where kindergarten has been much larger than we expected. And then the second thing, either my eyes are deceiving me, and I don't have my reading glasses, so I might be reading these wrong, but the 10th and 11th grade enrollment seem to have gone up from where they were last year, and you probably don't have the exact numbers, but I see 194 in the 11th grade, and that's a huge class for our school. And then 181 in the 10th grade, and I thought it was in the 160s when it was in the 9th. So I'm guessing that kids are coming back, or we're getting new students moving in, or?
It is part of that. In the administrative report, you have the preliminary enrollment, which is taken, actually the official preliminaries today. And then I also attached to that the 10-year enrollment projections, so you can see, you can track out the previous year's class. And it actually, if you look at the column 07, 08, and then you flip to the current enrollment, it's pretty consistent. For example, there were last year 179 students in the 9th grade, and so as 10th graders, it's 181 this year. Last year there were 192 in the 10th grade, and this year we have 194 in the 11th. The senior class, last year's junior class, 185, we now have 183. You do have a drop-off yet. Last year's 8th grade, 210. And you have 173. And if you look at that sheet, that's the 10-year projection, you can see what I had predicted to be in each one of these grades. So we had projected overall for this year, and these projections are done a year ago in November. We projected 2,793 students, pre-K to 12, and the preliminary right now is 2,798. So we're up by 5 students. The biggest discrepancy actually is occurring in the kindergarten class, where we projected based on the number of births, and then we increased that by a 15% growth. We projected 168 students based on the reported births 5 years earlier. And we have 196 in kindergarten. So that reflects over a 5-year period between births 5 years previously and the current enrollment. It reflects families moving into North Reading. And we anticipated that that number of kindergarten students would actually begin to fall. It's not. It's going to be in that range of about 200 students as we move on into the future.
So there's still that's troubling because that's been 2 years in a row. The other troubling thing is, and while the percentage is down, last year we lost 18% of our 8th graders. This year it's about 15%. And you can look at it that one way and say, well, that's fewer kids for us to educate. But at the same time, I don't think we want to run a K through 8 school system where once we get 8th grade, we have 15 to 20% of our students leaving every year. And I think part of that is related to the ups and downs of the budget, not knowing how much money we're going to get from the state, and what kind of programs we're going to have. I'm glad to see it going down a little, but that's 30 students this year going, and I think last year we had 36 or 37 going. So, but the kindergarten concerns me because that means most of those students are going to be around through 8th grade. Yes, we lose a few who go off to private schools in the 6th grade, but it's a very small number. And we're going to continue to have pressure at our elementary school level, which a couple of years ago we thought we were all through with the pressure there, and it was going to be at the middle and high school.
But expanding our all-day kindergarten program has to be capturing some kids that would have gone to private because they need the all-day program.
Well, that's true, but again, that number, if you look at the projected column from last November, 08-09, was predicated, it was set at 168, knowing that full-day kindergarten, that we were capturing
100% of all the opens.
Well, not quite 100%, but a good number of them. And again, it's based, you look at the census data, which actually I think recall when the census data was lower than the number of births, which census data is a little, potentially more accurate because that's done on an annual basis.
You're right.
Or-
We have two different ways of attempting to predict kindergarten enrollments. And the problem with the census data is that a lot of people don't return their census cards. So you try to build that error factor in, but even that approach undercounted, allowed us to underestimate kindergartners. That's why I agree with the superintendent when he said we sensed that there were some move-ins within the last year or two that swelled the numbers a little.
I think that this issue of, we're to the 5th year of full-day kindergarten, and this at least 5 years, where we're seeing a drop is actually that kindergarten to 1st grade. You would have families sending their child or children to private kindergarten, and then they'd be coming back in the 1st grade. So if you look at last year's kindergarten, last year's kindergarten, 208 students. Now, I have historically projected 1st grade as usually a 10% growth over the previous year's kindergarten. So we projected 227 students in 1st grade based on that. Actually, this year I dropped it a little bit to 9%, and the 1st grade is 218. So that's a little bit lower. And what that's saying is that of the kindergarten age children, a higher percentage of them are probably enrolled in our school now, and we're not going to be getting new ones as many. So as time goes on, I may lower that kindergarten to 1st grade.
1st grade.
Instead of using it was 10. It's historically been 10 for many years. This year I've dropped it for the first time to 9, and we may actually drop it a little bit lower.
But then you have to increase kindergarten. Right.
And I think, what we see here is essentially 13 years of the same enrollment at the middle school and high school for the next, or to senior year in high school from this current kindergarten class, we're still going to be seeing about 175 students. So we're not seeing a drop-off for a long time in our enrollment.
Once the Berry property is full?
Right, and we don't know what's going to happen over there either. And so I think that's, and I'm thinking of in terms of our secondary school building committee, there's no visible drop-off for the next 10 to 13 years in enrollment in this community. And I think that's important for the public to know as we move forward with our secondary projects, that they're really needed. You look at the current 3rd grade class with 252 students. And when that gets to the middle school, I can't even think of that class. That's a huge claess.
Well, and also, if you started pulling in or dropping the percent of 8th to 9th grade, I mean, you'll never get it to 0, and that's not our goal.
Right.
I think it is higher than it should be for North Reading, for our schools. So even if you were pulling in 15 additional students over 4 years, that's going to increase the total high school enrollment by 50 to 60 students.
Right.
We're talking 800.
Which is what we've set our target to be. Now, when you think about the 3 elementary schools, we had always designed this as 3 classrooms in the little school per grade, 3 at the hood school per grade, and 4 at the Bachelor school. So the number 200 is really what we projected. And that with the modular classrooms at the hood and the little, that should provide any safety on into the future.
And right now, we're grade 1, we have 11 classrooms. Grade 2, we have 11 classrooms. Grade 3, we have 11. So we're one more than we expected in 1, 2, and 3. And I think 4 and 5, we're at where we wanted to be with 10 classes each. But if you look at some of the grade 5 class sizes, they're not great.
Yeah, if we had a teacher, we'd have a room, right.
And